My girlfriend's ex-boyfriend shouted, "I'm taking her back." At her birthday party, but when I showed him the ring, he lost it. Then she said, "I'm not usually one for big, blowout parties, but when it came to Sierra's birthday, I knew it had to be special." She had that rare ability to light up a room, make everyone feel seen, make ordinary days extraordinary. When she hinted she wanted a big celebration this year, I went all in. After 2 years together, I was ready to take a leap. I'd been carrying a diamond ring around for over a month, waiting for the right time. I'd planned to propose at her birthday party with all her friends and family around. I had the whole moment mapped out in my head, candles, the perfect speech, her face lighting up as she said yes, everyone cheering. The party would be at the Summit, a cozy bar in downtown Seattle with brick walls and a view of the waterfront. The only complication? Adrian. Her ex. She'd told me all about him early on. He was her college boyfriend and still one of her best friends. They had an amicable breakup, and he had remained a fixture in her life, though I could never quite shake the way he seemed to linger around her like a shadow. At nearly every event, he'd find a way to be there, a little too close for comfort. I told myself it was my own jealousy, that if Sierra felt he was still worth having around, I could trust her judgment. But this year, for some reason, she hadn't invited him to the party. She'd actually rolled her eyes at the thought. "Adrian's been difficult lately," she'd muttered, scrunching her face. "Honestly, Derek, he's been so moody. I think he's going through something, but it's exhausting." I raised an eyebrow. "Moody, like about us?" "Maybe," she sighed, shaking her head. "I don't know. He's been acting possessive. Like, we're not even together, but he'll make these little digs at me, get on my case about things you and I do, like it's any of his business, but it's not about you, I promise. He's probably just projecting his own issues. He'll get over it." So, I thought, problem solved. No ex-boyfriend at her birthday party, no awkward stares or whispered comments. But I had no idea how wrong I was. The night of the party, I could hardly keep my hands from trembling as I slipped the ring box into my pocket. Elise, Sierra's best friend, knew about the plan. She'd be my cue when the time was right, and I'd make my move. The bar was perfect for a crowd but still intimate, with golden lights strung up along the walls and dark wooden tables that gave it a cozy, vintage feel. Sierra was the center of it all, her dark curls bouncing as she moved from one group to the next, laughing and glowing with that effortless charm that made me fall for her in the first place. At some point, I noticed her glance at the door, and I saw her face fall, just for a split second. I followed her gaze and felt my stomach tighten. Adrian had shown up anyway. There he was in his typical leather jacket, a bit scruffy, like he hadn't shaved in a few days. He made his way toward us, looking at Sierra with that cocky half-smile that always irked me. "Adrian," Sierra said, her voice caught between surprise and irritation. "I didn't think you were coming." He shrugged casually, giving her that same long, lingering hug he always did, one hand resting a little too long on her waist. "Wouldn't miss it," he said with a wink, glancing at me. "Good to see you too, Derek." "Adrian," I said, nodding stiffly. "Didn't know you'd be joining." He gave a smirk. "Yeah, wouldn't be a real party without me, right?" I bit my tongue, feeling the heat rise in my face but deciding to let it go. I wasn't going to let this guy ruin my night or distract me from what I was here to do. The proposal was all that mattered. All I had to do was wait for Elise's signal. The night went on, and the drinks kept flowing. Adrian seemed to be drinking more than usual, and each time I looked over, he was watching Sierra. She tried to ignore him, but I could tell she felt his eyes on her. At one point, she came over to me, shaking her head in frustration. "I'm so sorry he's here," she muttered under her breath, tugging at my arm. "He's been weird all night." "It's fine, babe," I said, forcing a smile. "He'll probably leave soon." She rolled her eyes. "God, I hope so." Then, as if he had radar for whenever we were alone, Adrian drifted over, leaning against the bar with a lazy grin. "So, Sierra," he said, voice slurring slightly. "What's the plan after this? Any after party? Maybe just you and me? You remember that one time after your 23rd birthday, right?" Sierra's face flushed. "Adrian, stop. You're making it weird." He laughed, and it was an ugly sound. "Weird? Come on, we go way back, you and me. Derek here wouldn't get it, though, would he?" I clenched my jaw. "Actually, I think I do." Adrian's face twisted as he turned to me, his eyes narrowing. "Oh, do you now?" "Yes, I do," I said, my voice calm but firm. "And maybe it's time you respect Sierra's choices, don't you think?" He scoffed, looking at Sierra like she'd betrayed him. "Is that what this is? Sierra's choice?" Sierra took a step back, crossing her arms. "Adrian, don't do this. Not tonight." But he didn't stop. Instead, he raised his glass, sloshing a bit of his drink as he turned to the room and shouted, "Hey, everyone. I have a little toast to make." My heart sank. This wasn't part of the plan. He tapped his glass again, his voice booming over the soft music and conversation. So, here we are, celebrating the amazing Sierra, he began, slurring slightly but keeping his voice loud and steady. I just wanted to say. This woman right here, he pointed at her, his gaze intense, is the best thing that ever happened to me. Sierra looked mortified, her face flushed as she shook her head. Adrian, stop. No, Sierra, he insisted, I need to say this. Because maybe you forgot, but I haven't. I remember the way we were. I remember everything about you. And I know deep down, you remember it too. I stepped forward, unable to stay silent any longer. Adrian, enough. You're embarrassing yourself. Am I? He whirled on me, his face inches from mine. Or am I just saying what you're too afraid to admit, huh? My fists clenched. Back off, man. This isn't the time or place. Adrian laughed, stepping back, shaking his head. The time or place? You don't know anything about us, Derek. Sierra and I, we're history. We have roots. And you? He sneered, looking me up and down. You're just some placeholder. Adrian, that's enough, Sierra shouted, her voice shaking. You're out of line. But Adrian didn't listen. Instead, he turned to me, a vicious look in his eyes. Why don't you ask her what she said to me 2 weeks ago? My heart pounded. I glanced at Sierra, who looked away, her face pale. What is he talking about, Sierra? Sierra hesitated, biting her lip. Derek, it's nothing. He's just trying to stir up trouble. Nothing? Adrian sneered. Tell him, Sierra. Tell him what you told me when we were sitting in your apartment, drinking wine, just the two of us. Or should I? Sierra's eyes darted around, a trapped look on her face. Derek, I can explain. Explain what? I demanded, feeling the ground start to give way under me. What happened? Adrian's smile was triumphant as he took another swig of his drink. She said she missed me, Derek. She said maybe breaking up was a mistake. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I turned to Sierra, searching her face for any sign that he was lying, but the guilt was written all over her. Sierra? My voice was barely a whisper. She looked away, tears brimming in her eyes. I was just confused. It was a moment of weakness, Derek. It didn't mean anything. Adrian laughed, shaking his head. Didn't mean anything? You kissed me, Sierra. Or did you forget that part? Sierra's face went white. That's not true. I was drunk, Adrian. I told you it was a mistake. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You kissed him? It was just once, she cried, grabbing my hand. Derek, I swear, it meant nothing. I was drunk, and he was there, and I was just. I don't know. I was stupid. I pulled my hand away, feeling a surge of anger I'd never felt before. Stupid? Sierra, you told me he was out of your life. You promised me there was nothing between you two. There isn't. She pleaded, reaching for me. Please, Derek, it's over. It was a mistake. Adrian shook his head, a smug grin on his face. Face it, Derek. She'll always come back to me. I looked at him, my fists clenched. Get out. Now. He held his hands up, laughing. Fine, I'll go. But you two should talk. You've got a lot to work through, it seems. With that, he walked out, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. I turned to Sierra, my heart pounding. Why didn't you tell me? Tears were streaming down her face now. Because I was ashamed. I was scared you'd leave me. I love you, Derek. You're the one I want, I swear. I shook my head, backing away. I don't know, Sierra. I thought we had something real, but now. I don't know what to believe. She reached out, her voice breaking. Please, Derek. Don't throw us away over one stupid mistake. I love you. I made a mistake, but I want you. I looked at her, the woman I thought I knew, and all I could feel was betrayal. I need time, Sierra. I need to think. With that, I turned and walked out, leaving her standing there, broken and alone. In the days that followed, I ignored her calls, her texts. I couldn't bear to see her, to hear her voice. I packed my things, moved to Portland, and tried to put it all behind me. But sometimes, even when you move on, the hurt stays. 6 months later. Portland had been a fresh start. I buried myself in work, made new friends, even picked up a few hobbies to keep my mind off everything that had gone down with Sierra. The memories of that night still haunted me, Adrian's smug face, Sierra's guilty expression, the awful truth that the woman I thought was my forever had been lying to me. I tried not to keep tabs on her, but sometimes, curiosity got the better of me. I'd check her social media now and then. For the most part, she seemed to be living her life, posts with friends, hikes, parties. But there was one thing missing, Adrian. Not once had he shown up on her feed. About a month ago, I noticed she'd started posting these reflective quotes, stuff about regret and forgiveness. Typical Sierra, cryptic messages, hoping someone, me, probably, would notice. At one point, she posted a photo of her hand with a caption that read, "Missing what could have been." There was no ring, no trace of him in her life. I was ready to move on, to leave her behind and never look back. But then, out of the blue, I got a call from Elise, Sierra's best friend. "Hey, Derek. It's been a while." "Elise?" I replied, caught off guard. We hadn't spoken since the night of Sierra's birthday. "Is everything all right?" She hesitated, her voice thick with an unspoken worry. I wasn't sure if I should reach out, but I think you deserve to know the truth about what's been happening with Sierra and Adrian. I gripped the phone tighter. I thought I already knew the truth. Elise sighed. "Look, it's complicated. Sierra hasn't been herself lately. Adrian. He really messed with her head. She's been telling people what happened that night, and it's not exactly what you think. Adrian lied." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Derek, it was all a setup. Adrian knew you were going to propose. He knew everything. He manipulated her into thinking he wanted her back, got her drunk, and then staged that kiss. She told me she felt pressured, but she was too ashamed to admit it after he twisted everything that night. He lied to make you walk out." My pulse quickened, anger surging in my veins. "Why would he do that?" "Because he's possessive. He hates seeing Sierra with anyone else, even though he doesn't want her for real. And he couldn't stand that she'd moved on, that you made her happy. He's been messing with her head for years, Derek." There was a long silence as I took it all in. Part of me felt vindicated, she hadn't actually betrayed me in the way I'd thought. But another part of me was furious that Adrian had manipulated both of us. If anyone was going to be left in the dust after all this, it was going to be him. "Elise," I said slowly, "I think it's time someone taught Adrian a lesson." After talking things over with Elise, we put a plan in motion. Sierra didn't know I was in on it. Elise wanted it to feel like her genuine intervention. I had no intention of getting back with Sierra, but I did want to give Adrian a taste of his own medicine. Elise and I crafted a fake reunion story. She told Sierra that I was ready to forgive and maybe even willing to talk about reconciliation. She hinted that I'd missed her, that the distance had made me realize some things. Sierra was hesitant at first, but after a few weeks of subtle nudges from Elise, she agreed to meet me for dinner, just to talk. Elise was certain Adrian would catch wind of our reunion. He still kept tabs on Sierra through mutual friends and occasionally showed up at the same places. And right on cue, he heard that she and I were reconnecting. Elise played her role perfectly, fanning the flames with little hints here and there, making sure Adrian knew exactly when and where we'd be meeting. On the night of the dinner, I booked a table at an upscale restaurant downtown. Sierra arrived first, looking nervous but hopeful. She had on a dress I remembered from one of our earlier dates, and for a moment, I felt a pang of nostalgia. She looked beautiful, but the hurt was still there, and I knew I couldn't let her back into my life. Not after all that had happened. As we sat down, I glanced at the entrance, waiting. Adrian wasn't going to pass up an opportunity to see us together. We talked for a bit, mostly surface-level stuff, catching up on work, our new lives, making small talk like strangers. She kept glancing down, clearly nervous, maybe hoping for a heartfelt confession from me. Finally, she asked, "Derek, is there any chance you could forgive me? I know I hurt you, and I'm so sorry." I was confused, but I know now that you're the one I want. I looked her straight in the eye. "Sierra, I need you to tell me the truth. Do you really think you would have kissed him if he hadn't manipulated you?" Her face fell, and she nodded, tears filling her eyes. "No. Adrian knew what he was doing, Derek. He made me feel like I was missing something, like he was some kind of safety net. I hate that I let him get into my head." Just then, the restaurant door swung open, and Adrian walked in, looking smug and self-satisfied. He must have thought he was about to catch us in some romantic reunion. I leaned back in my chair, watching as his face fell, realizing he'd walked into something he hadn't anticipated. "Oh, look," I said loudly, smirking as I waved him over. "Adrian. Didn't expect to see you here." Sierra turned, her face going pale. "Adrian? What? What are you doing here?" Adrian froze, glancing from Sierra to me, and then back to Sierra. He was trapped. He tried to cover his shock with a grin, but it looked forced. "Oh, I just happened to be in the neighborhood." "Right," I said, leaning forward. "In the neighborhood, just when Sierra and I are having dinner. Small world." He stammered, I thought I'd check in. You know, see how things are going." Sierra narrowed her eyes, anger simmering beneath the surface. "Adrian, what the hell is going on? Were you following us?" He laughed nervously. No, of course not. I just wanted to say hi." I stood up, locking eyes with him. "Actually, Adrian, I think it's time you leave." He smirked, trying to keep his composure. "Or what, Derek? You're going to kick me out?" "No," I said, pulling out my phone. "But I am going to make sure everyone in your life knows exactly who you are." He laughed. What, you think you can ruin me with a few text messages? Oh, I've got more than a few, I said, my voice low and calm. Turns out Elise had screenshots of every message you sent to Sierra over the years. All those manipulative little things you'd say, the way you twisted her thoughts, tried to sabotage every relationship she had. I've got it all. His face went white. You wouldn't. Try me, I said. One word to Sierra's parents, her friends, our old mutuals, and they'll all see you for what you are, a control freak who can't handle the fact that she moved on. He sputtered, rage flashing across his face. This isn't over, Derek. Oh, it is, I said, nodding at the exit. Walk away now, or I send these screenshots out right here, right now. For a long, tense moment, he stared me down, his face contorting with anger. But he must have known he was cornered, because he turned on his heel and stormed out of the restaurant, the door slamming shut behind him. Once he was gone, Sierra looked at me, her eyes wide with gratitude and remorse. Derek. Thank you. You didn't have to do any of this. I sighed, feeling the weight of it all settle in. I didn't do it for you, Sierra. I did it because I'm done letting people like him control anyone's life. She nodded, looking down, her hands trembling slightly. I know. I'm sorry. For everything. I nodded. I forgive you, Sierra. But we're done. I hope you can find the peace you deserve. Without him. With that, I walked out, leaving her behind, free of the past, free of the toxic shadow that Adrian had cast over both our lives. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of closure. And as I stepped into the cool night air, I knew I was finally, truly free.